write the interesting report. I want to just go over a couple things you've already done because a report writing is going to be part of this next section we have in business communications. A formal report is a document in which the writer analyzes findings, draws conclusions, and makes recommendations intended to solve a problem. Findings, conclusions, and recommendations. That needs to be part of all your formal reports, not just this class, but also when you dive into the world of business and you become a big shot in some kind of corporation as you go through, maybe your own company as you go through. There's similar proposals a lot of times in length, organization, and a serious tone as you go through. But unlike proposals, formal reports don't have to make an offer or respond to an RFP as you go through. Here are some of the basics you've already heard about and learned. Bulleted lists bring clarity to difficult topics. Number lists can provide detailed instructions in sequential order. They really help an awful lot if you're telling somebody what to do. Letter lists help a lot, but too many bullet points, too many lists, words can create confusion, however. So make certain that when you sit down there and write a paper, you have nice white space available as you go through. Don't cram things in and don't confuse the reader. Make them comfortable to read the report, not jam so much stuff into it. Their eyes are darting all over the place on the paper as you go through. Remember, we talked about this early on. You talked about it in previous classes. You've been talking about this since 4th grade, probably, maybe even 3rd grade. Okay, there's 4 kinds of sentences. Mix them up. Simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, compound, complex sentence. Mix them all up in the same paragraph. That really makes the interesting reader more interested because you're sitting there mixing it up, you're changing the way it's written, you're changing all kinds of things to sit down and break up the monotony of a report and break up the monotone as you go through the whole thing. Those things really help as you go through. Remember what person you're going to use. Will your report be very formal? If that's the case, you never use the first or second person, it's always third person. Will be formal with a casual tone. Should you use the first person, the second person, the third person, maybe the 4th or 5th person? Wait a minute, those don't exist here. Okay, that being said, what voice did you use? If it's going to be a friendly audience or a neutral audience, active voice is always the best one to use. If it's an indirect report where the audience doesn't know the material or might be hostile, you sit back and say, okay, we want to talk about this topic as a group. Let's all communicate together. Use passive voice in that one too, so make that decision. And the fonts. Use fonts with tails for the text and harsh for the headers. Tails for text, harsh for headers as you go through. You catch that? The parallelism, tails with the T for text, TT, HH, harsh for headers. Use Arial and Times New Roman. You can actually see right here on the screen that Arial is a very harsh font. It looks, it kind of grabs your attention, and the Times New Roman is kind of comforting as you go through, or you could use Calibri and Cambria as you go through. And you'll have different aspects. Their screenplays is written in Couriers, which is actually the old way from a mechanical typewriter in the old days where every letter is exactly the same space. So you'll have different aspects, and it depends on the organization you're in as to what's appropriate for text as you go through. I used to send out emails, and my signature was always in brown digital ink as you go through. And that's kind of a fun way. So mix things up. Don't always be normal. Just conform, but don't always conform with everything as you go through. Quotes can really sit down and add things to your paper. Make sure it's a credible source as you go through. The best of men lead lives of quiet desperation by Henry David Thoreau. From this one, I don't know if you recognize where it came from. If you don't find a way to make money when you're sleeping, you'll work until the day you die. Warren Buffett, probably one of the smartest people in the world on how to make money. The man's a genius at it and also a multi-billionaire. Stay away from negative people. They have a problem for every solution. Albert Einstein. That's pretty smart, if I don't say so myself. We must reject the notion that every time a law is broken, society is guilty rather than the lawbreaker. It's time to restore the American precept that each individual is accountable for his own actions. Ronald Reagan. One of the best ones out here. You have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose, from Dr. Seuss. There's a lot of quotes out there that if you have a topic that's germane to it, in other words, related to it, add a quote to it. If you're writing some kind of a report that has multiple chapters to it, a quote at the beginning of each chapter, or maybe one at the end of the chapter to sum up things, those things really help as you go through. Proofreading, don't trust your computer. Your computer can sit down and memorize a mistake by you going click and you accept it. Then all of a sudden you'll be like me. Half the time, depends what computer I'm on, it takes TEH as the word the. Okay, that's my mistake because I accepted it once and I'm stuck forever until I go back and change my dictionary. For final review, print it on paper. Don't trust digital because digital is all on the screen and sometimes your eyes get lazy on the screen. Paper, mix up the medium for you as you go through. And by the way, if it's a draft, double spacing is always appropriate. Not so much for your final, but for a draft. Mark it, scribble, make it awesome. And on proofreading, be like Santa. He checks his list twice to see who's naughty nice. Be the same thing as you go through. Keep in mind on proofreading, it's such a critical part. 100% of business professionals in a large survey said writing errors influences their opinion about business. 100% said that. 77%. Did you hear that? 77% eliminated a company due to typos. Oh, and by the way, you think a college professor, they see a typo, you think they're going to sit back and be quiet about it and not ding you on the process? Make certain your academic papers are high quality, just like you're pitching $1 million account as you go through. You don't want to have a typo in $1 million account and all of a sudden lose $1 million revenue for your company because you put a typo or two in there and didn't care to go back and fix it. 75% of business pros thought misspelled words are inexcusable. 57% stop considering company if a brochure has a misprint, and 30% of web users leave the site if there's typos on it. Typos drive people crazy. They may not say anything. They may just go click and you're gone. And so is their business as you go through. Steps for writing formal business reports: determine the purpose and scope, anticipate what the audience is looking for, decide on a plan about the research methods too, conduct the research using primary, in other words, when you do the research yourself, and secondary, that's when you gather other sources that are already done. We call those secondary research. Primary is when you do it, like with focus groups or surveys or customers as you go through. Organize, analyze, and draw conclusions, and then design graphics to clarify the report's message as you go through. Really, you want to look at a couple of things too in the process. You want to look at the format, make sure it's really good, the heading levels, the accuracy, the consistency. A lot of times, if you do a paper, especially as a group with different people working together, you want to have a final editor to go through and read the paper so you have the same voice or the same tonality coming through the paper so it flows from beginning to end as you go through, so it's consistent. Graphics really kick up the quality of a paper. People like graphics a lot more than words as you go through, and make sure the mechanics is really well done. So to write an interesting report, use different kinds of sentences, quotes, plan your fonts, create numbers with numbered lists, bullet lists, and proofread, proofread, proofread. Write the interesting report. Take care.